Our speaker here is Neale, and I'll pass over to Neale because it is time for the talk. If you're ready, Neale.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Just let me know if I need to stop talking for technical reasons or if I cut out or for whatever reason. But so far,
you immediately said that and cut out.
so good.
We've lost you, Neale.
Yeah.
We've lost you, Neale.
Well, isn't it?
Technical reasons, didn't you?
Oh, how about now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, the video just froze for a second there.
Obviously, spirit interference.
Yeah, maybe it's sort of strengthening the connection. All right. Well, it's really wonderful, isn't it, that we can be here with me sitting here in the Gold
We've lost you again.
Coast
We've lost you.
in Queensland. Yes, I was saying it's wonderful with technology as it is that we can be here all over Australia sharing this moment. And it's so good to be able to reconnect with the mission after moving to Queensland 10 years ago. So, yeah, I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And when it comes to speaking about Silver Birch, it's almost impossible to know where to start because there's so many different areas you can go off into. And given that I've been given about a 10-minute time frame.
Hello?
Going to take a
Call again.
bit of editing. Areas.
The guy.
Yep.
All right. Now, for those that don't know, there is a spiritual church in Brisbane that's been around for over 100 years, and it was actually opened by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the Sherlock Holmes author, who was a very big fan of spiritualism back in the day. So it was actually a purpose-built church for spiritualism. And it was really interesting to go there 10 years ago and sit there and look at these stained glass windows. And one of the windows really got my interest because it had 3 words. And those words were freedom, love, reason. And it's not often that you would follow any sort of religion and have reason as one of the main tenets or main points of that religion. And that's a good way to sort of segue into a talk about Silver Birch, because reason plays a very big part of the information that Silver Birch passes on to us. And he actually has a bit of a saying that has a lot to do with reason, and that is, if anything I say offends your sense of knowledge or reason, then by all means reject it. And that's a really good thing to bear in mind when you're actually reading or even listening to some of the things Silver Birch says, because our brains, our knowledge, our intelligence, our experience, our reason are all gifts from spirit, and they're there to be used. We don't have to automatically accept as gospel truth anything we're told by leaders, teachers, mentors, or gurus. It's up to to use our own minds to accept if anything makes sense or resonates to us or not. Another thing Silver Birch says, it's good to have an open mind, but not an empty one. That's that same sort of concept. Don't accept things at face value. Just run them through your own sense of discernment. And that's pretty important with Silver Birch because some of the things that have come through him can be pretty challenging. And I guess a good place to start with Silver Birch is, well, who is Silver Birch? And there's an easy answer. And the easy answer is that Silver Birch is the spirit of a Native American Indian who spoke through the body of someone called Maurice Barbanell and first started doing that almost 100 years ago in England and kept on going right until the early 80s. But to get an idea of how this came to be, we really need to go a bit further back and to have a look at the reason why Silver Birch wanted to connect with Maurice Barbanell and then through him to connect with us. And to get an idea of that, it helps to understand that there are degrees of progress in a spiritual sense. And we're in this physical, what you call a physical degree, that we're in this dense world of matter and our vibrations are very low. And that when we physically die, our consciousness, our memories, our thoughts, our values, they go on. So we basically shed our bodies like a snake sheds their skin, and we move on to the next level of spiritual progress, or the next phase. Which means that when we move on, we're pretty much the same as we are on Earth. And there's a mob of entities, or whatever you want to call, higher level spirits at the next level, and they're not very impressed with the quality of personality that's coming through from Earth, which is not much of a surprise these days, given the amount of ignorance and prejudice, fear that's around. And so this bunch of advanced entities got together and thought, well, we need to do something to improve the quality of the personalities that are coming through from Earth. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And these are high-level entities whose vibrations are so much more advanced than ours that it would be impossible for them to lower their vibrations enough to make any sort of direct contact with people here on Earth. So they came up with this pretty ingenious process. So to start with, you've got this collective that want to pass on knowledge, laws and spiritual truths to Earth. And they came up with a spokesperson or a mouthpiece. And this mouthpiece used to live on Earth, but has made such amazing spiritual progress that they're no longer able to lower their vibrations enough to contact Earth. So what this mouthpiece or spokesperson did was to basically piggyback upon the astral body of a Red Indian who made their body available to act as a bit of an intermediary. So you've got the collective, you've got the mouthpiece, you've got the astral body of a Native American Indian who is then able to make contact with Maurice Barbanell and speak through him, which is pretty exhausting trying to explain. It sounds very complicated. So maybe it's a lot easier just to say that Silver Birch is a Native American Indian who speaks through Maurice Barbanell. And as I was saying earlier, yeah, our world is basically not a world of good people. And Silver Birch, in his own words, says, "I am but a humble servant, an interpreter for those who have sent me to expound forgotten laws that must be revived as part of the new world that is gradually dawning. Think of me always as a mouthpiece." So he's the mouthpiece, the voice for a collective. And just as a bit of an aside, this collective is sort of part of an association, a group of spiritual beings who have taken on as their mission to improve the spiritual knowledge and awareness here on Earth. And they actually have, I guess you call them, annual general meetings, which from memory I think takes place around about Christmas time. And believe it or not, their leader is someone you might recall as living on Earth 2,000 years ago, going by the name of Jesus Christ. However, according to Silver Birch, our sense of Jesus Christ is a lot different from how he actually was, which also includes the teachings that were passed on. And for that reason, Silver Birch always refers to him as the Nazarene, just to make a distinction between the Christ of the church and the Christ as Silver Birch knows him. So that's a little bit of a digression there. And so the work of this group didn't begin with Maurice Barbanell. It actually began almost 100 years previously to that, which follows on pretty well from what Jim was talking about Hydesville, that it seemed that this group's efforts to communicate with us began with the Hydesville rappings, which is, 150, 170 years ago now. And sadly, as Silver Birch says, that their work, which began 100 years ago, has often been dismissed as nothing more than table rapping, like someone just knocking on a table. So I guess to a greater degree it wasn't taken very seriously, which is perhaps why they came up with the idea of making direct contact, to be able to channel directly through transmediumship. Or I'm not sure if that was transmediumship coming through there or not. Sounds like someone's microphone's not muted. Yeah, and so the question is, well, what does this work? How are they going to increase the spiritual knowledge here on Earth? And, well, there's two main ways that they've decided this needs to be done. One is through mediumship and one is through healing. And both of these come under the umbrella of service. Or as Silver Birch would say, service is the coin of spirit, because everything in this material world that we think has value has no value in the next world. Our physical wealth, money, property, possessions, well, when we move on, it stays behind. But one thing that does have currency in the next world is service. And the main aim of mediumship is to provide comfort and solace to those who have lost loved ones. That it is very easy to get lost in a world of grief and grieving and to think that death is the end. Whereas the purpose of mediumship is to demonstrate that death is not the end. Death is simply the next chapter of your story. It's the next step on the ladder of your spiritual journey. And mediumship also demonstrates that our loved ones never leave us. Their physical bodies are no longer here when they die. However, the spirits are always with us. They are with us when they need us, when we need them. They are near us when we need to talk to them. And they will do anything they can to assist us when we need help. Now, the other side of this mission is healing. And that's an interesting concept, because when you talk about healing, you might think about physical healing. Like healing was the process you go through to break an arm. But from Silver Birch's point of view, healing has a different purpose. It's not so much a physical purpose, it's a spiritual purpose. So if you're going to be performing healing on someone and they physically get better, that's not necessarily successful healing from a spiritual perspective. If you are providing healing for someone and you touch their soul, then that is a successful use of spiritual healing. Because when you touch someone's soul, then you open up a world of possibilities to them. Right, so that's the two basic areas where Silver Birch wanted to work on. There's so many different topics beyond that which he was questioned on, and he provided a lot of answers about. One example of that would be natural law, trying to explain how the universe works, which is almost impossible because it's very hard to explain such a complex concept to us using just words. So in essence, natural law is cause and effect. It's about the universe being a perfect machine. And by perfect machine, I mean that everything happens in just the way it's meant to. There is no accident, there is no chance, there is no randomness, that the universe operates perfectly. So for every set of situations and circumstances, there can only ever be one possible outcome. In terms of challenging concepts, the whole idea of organ transplants, that's a tricky one, because Silver Birch is not a fan of that, because you're actually If you get an organ transplant from someone else, you're getting part of their spiritual energy or their spiritual essence, which I guess can sort of muddy the waters in a spiritual sense. Silver Birch is quite happy for skin transplants as long as the skin's from your own body, quite happy for blood transplants as long as it's your own blood. So those concepts can be quite challenging. Another challenging thing is the whole idea around suffering, which I might come to a little bit later. But for now, how are we going for time, Jim?
Okay, yeah, okay.
All right. Because I was trying to keep it fairly short, but I'd sort of be dipping into various Silver Birch books and coming up with things which just seem so relevant. And that's one of the joys of Silver Birch, is you can pick up any of his books, turn to any page, and just read something there, and it will be relevant and meaningful. So I did pick out a couple of things to read. And as I said, yeah, lots of books around. So one of them is about spiritual awakening. And I guess everyone here has their own story of how they've been living their life thinking this is all there was, and we already know everything we need to know, and then something happens and we realise there's a much greater world out there, and there's so much spiritual knowledge waiting for us to discover it. And in that sense, Silver Birch says, from their perspective, up in this non-physical world looking down on us, what they see and what they're looking for is us to start to wake up. And he says, we wait for you to awaken from your long slumber. It may take many years. When you awaken, you say, let's get on with it. What are we waiting for? The Great Spirit is not in a hurry and has devised the natural laws to assure that all growth will be achieved slowly and according to plan. All will be revealed in the fullness of time. You have placed your foot on the rung of the ladder and are beginning to climb. There are plenty more rungs for you to ascend. As you do so, you will become increasingly aware of yourself and all its infinite potentialities. And from another book, you cannot change the world at once. Neither can you change people. You can change only yourselves. You are responsible for what you do and for nobody else. Help wherever you can. Serve wherever you can. Offer what you have received. If others will share it, rejoice. If not, let them go their way. Those you are here to help will be brought to you. And this is so different from religions where you see people standing on street corners just shouting at passers-by, reading stuff from the Bible. This is the opposite. This is saying that Spirit will bring people to us at the right time for them and the right time for us to help them. And should our help not be received, well, let it go. Wait for the next person to come along that you can help, or go to people that can help you. And it's just so reassuring to be able to read things like this. It's just so helpful. And when I first thought about giving a talk on Silver Birch, I was thinking, well, perhaps I could find some things that would be relevant to today, because there are lots of things going on right now that are really challenging, that make life seem really difficult. And I came up with a couple of things from different books and different parts of books, 3 different sentences that fit together really well. If you're looking for something to help get through these moments, just have a listen to this. If shadows cross your path, if troubles lie upon you, if doubt stirs your mind and perplexity finds a dwelling place within you, remember they are not realities. Give them wings and send them speedily forth on their flight. Just do the best you can. Strive for the utmost that lies within your power. There is nothing for you to fear. There are difficulties, but these will be surmounted. Each morrow that dawns is an opportunity for another spiritual adventure. It is the Spirit which is the breath of all life, the Spirit that binds us to one another and to Thee, so that for all eternity we are linked with Thee in unbroken fashion. Nothing on earth or in the spheres beyond can sever the divine tie that makes us all members of one vast spiritual family. Now, something I didn't touch on is he does mention spirit or great spirit quite a lot. And again, that's something that could occupy its own talk around what great spirit is, how it sees us as fitting in with an overall plan about reaching grace, reaching eternity, which is a journey of infinity because perfection is so difficult to reach. Yet we are all part of that journey, and we are all working together to reach that goal, whether it seems like it or not. I might just grab one more, which sort of takes me back to the start of this talk. It's Silver Birch talking about knowledge and reason. I always tell you two things which are important. One is when you enter the world where knowledge cannot help you, then rely on that faith which is in the first place was founded on knowledge. The other is use your reason. It is the Great Spirit's gift to you. Never fail to reject that which does not measure up to the standard of your reasonableness. For your reason will develop and grow, and thus your standards will increase. Like all statements which seem contradictory, it is but a paradox, and paradoxes are the emblems of truth. When your reason asks questions, I do not condemn it. I rejoice because the fact that it is asking questions means the soul is stirring, and that always gives me cause for rejoicing. I hope I have acquitted myself fairly well, Silver Birch says, and then with a smile he looks at the former Methodist minister and says, when the examination paper comes round, mark mine with charity and kindness. So I think that's a good word to end with. So thank you all very much for your attention and time.
Thank
you,
you.
Neale. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
That
you.
was great.
Thank you.
Just to give a bit of background, when you get things like blood transfusion, etc., when people think about trance, they don't really, they tend to think about channeling nowadays because people tend to call it that, but the sort of trance that Maurice Barbanell did was deep trance, which means he basically tries to take himself into, he goes into into a state where he's not there, he doesn't hear or feel or see what goes on, and somebody is recording it. In this case, it was I think Hannah Swaffer used one of the people who took dictating from the newspaper he worked at, and they recorded what went on, and Barbanell only saw it afterwards. But however good that connection is, every so often the subconscious mind of the individual will get in the way of the transmission. And it can sometimes, if they've got very strongly held views, get in the way. And some of the views which clash at times are Barbanell's own views rather than Silver Birch's. I don't know if that makes sense to people. They can understand that however much you are in trance, there is a part of you that can at times, your subconscious can pop out. The beauty of trance is your subconscious is more or less out of the mix. If you're just doing light inspiration, your subconscious is very much in the mix. So what you get is going to be a blend of many things, your mind, your thoughts, maybe a bit of what spirit says. Deep trance is interesting to see. As Neale knows, some people in mission know, this is a deep trance medium who doesn't like doing it because of the residual impact on you after finishing it. So, but that was a fabulous talk, Neale. Great,
Well,
great.
thank you. And one more thing, can I add one more thing?
Yep.
That, yeah, there's plenty of books around, there's e-books around, and there's also something on YouTube because they actually recorded a Silver Birch session
There it is. I'm
a
gonna.
while ago, and you can Google it or go to YouTube and just do a search for Silver Birch Speaks, and you can listen to an entire session.
I might actually put that lot together in one and slide it on YouTube as well. It's the one that slides past copyright. Every other, apart from 2 books, the rest of them are under copyright to the Spiritual Truth Foundation, which is a spiritualist charity. The chairman used to be Roy Stemmen, and Roy had the honour of following Maurice Barbanell as the editor of Psychic News when Maurice Barbanell left Psychic News. He left it on several occasions, but came back once or twice. Maurice Barbanell founded the famous English spiritualist newspaper Psychic News. So thanks, Neale, that was good.
All right, thank you.
And now we'll see how I go with the